We often trick ourselves into believing that personal change requires a dramatic event. We imagine waking up one morning with sudden, unwavering discipline and absolute clarity about our future. So, we wait. We wait for a better economy, a fortunate opportunity, or simply the right burst of inspiration to finally begin living differently. The problem with relying on motivation is that it is an entirely unreliable emotion. Some mornings you wake up energized. Other days you question every goal you've ever set. When that initial enthusiasm inevitably fades and immediate results don't show up, the effort collapses. This chart shows what psychologists call the valley of disappointment. The line representing your effort increases steadily, but the line representing visible progress remains completely flat. During this period, you might look at your life and conclude that your actions aren't working. We are conditioned to expect immediate gratification. We see the overnight success stories and the spectacular achievements, but we are completely blind to the thousands of ordinary, frustrating mornings that actually produce them. While you wait for perfect conditions or a surge of motivation, months quietly become years. Believing that your future depends entirely on external forces is the exact mechanism that ensures your life will remain exactly as it is today. I was born in El Salvador into extreme poverty. My mother could not read or write, and she worked tirelessly selling food in markets just to keep us alive. We didn't talk about success because survival occupied every waking hour. Then the Civil War consumed the country. Violence became ordinary, fear became familiar, and any conventional path toward a better life disappeared beneath the uncertainty of whether tomorrow was even guaranteed. When I eventually left for North America, I possessed no resources, no education, and barely understood the language. I parked cars. I washed dishes. I took whatever grueling, invisible labor I could find, just to maintain a baseline of survival. In situations like that, it is incredibly tempting to conclude that life is unfair and no further effort matters. If the world is entirely to blame for your suffering, you owe the world nothing. You become a permanent victim of the system. There is an enormous difference between fault and responsibility. You may not be responsible for the poverty, illness, or broken systems you inherited, but you are entirely responsible for deciding what those hardships will mean for your future. Surrendering that responsibility unknowingly surrenders your power. Even in a deeply unfair system, taking ownership of your response is the only mathematical path to progress. Because my formal education ended after the 8th grade, the public library became my university. I spent thousands of hours reading books on investing, business, and history. No professor assigned those pages. Responsibility did. In the beginning, the financial statements looked like a foreign language. Progress was agonizingly slow. There were no visible rewards, no audience applauding those nights, and plenty of evenings where I questioned if any of it mattered. This graph illustrates the actual mathematics of compounding incrementalism. When you map a single tiny unit of input, like reading one chapter or saving $1, onto a long timeline, it looks entirely meaningless. You decide to wake up 30 minutes earlier. You save $20 instead of spending it. You read 10 pages. In isolation, these daily micro-decisions appear statistically insignificant. For a long time, the overall trajectory of your life seems stubbornly flat. But then those inputs compound. The invisible work precedes the visible reward. Over years and decades, that flat line suddenly curves upward, proving that extraordinary outcomes are the mathematical result of ordinary consistency. Through these thousands of repetitions, the brain replaces old habits with new skills, effectively rewriting a person's core identity. You become what you repeatedly practice. You do not forge a new character through occasional bursts of massive effort. You program it through the relentless consistency of boring, daily decisions. Since identity relies on consistent repetition, we face a logistical problem. How do we ensure that repetition happens when our willpower inevitably fails? Successful organizations don't build their operations around inspiration. Airlines rely on checklists. Manufacturers build production lines. They rely on documented, automated systems that produce a desired outcome, regardless of how anyone happens to feel that day. Look at how we approach financial security. If you decide to save whatever money is left over at the end of the month, you are depending on your own self-control every single day. If you create an automatic transfer that moves 15% of your paycheck into an investment account before you even see it, you've built a system. Automation wins. You can apply this logic directly to your physical environment. If distractions dominate your workspace, focus becomes a daily struggle. By organizing your space and removing friction, you make beneficial habits easier to execute than destructive ones. When a person organizes their own life, from their finances to their health, they stop being a source of chaos for those around them. A parent who manages their stress through a routine becomes a more stable presence for their child. An employee who automates their workflow becomes a more reliable teammate. Personal order creates social stability. The future you hope for will not arrive because the world finally hands you the perfect circumstances. It arrives because you build the personal architecture capable of thriving despite them.